Good morning, everybody, and good morning to our webinar viewers. This morning our group discussion, as I'll read it, is to work with a chosen conflict and how it works out in our life and intuition as the means of harmonizing this conflict. So previous to this group meeting, we have been working with our in previous groups, and each member here has identified a point of conflict in their lives and related it to their chart, and I'm going to ask each participant to share that, and perhaps viewers might also like to think of that as well. If you've been working with us, you will have a conflict that you'd like to work with. And the goal in this workshop is to really identify how we can use meditation and the intuition to really resolve conflict, and how to relate what we know within ourselves as conflict and what we see in our charts and in our meditations. And each person will have a different experience, and it'll be very interesting, I'm sure. I hope you enjoy it. And so I'll start with my glasses. I'll start with, if you'd like to, each member would like to introduce themselves to the webinar. We'll start with Eva Smith. And what conflict have you identified, Eva?
In my chart, the moon is squared to my Neptune, and both of these are the rulers of my ascendant. So
how has that worked out in conflict in your life? Can you share an experience, or just generally?
Right. I took the moon to represent my form, my body. And my body right now is in a lot of pain. I have these knots in my scapula, my shoulder blades, my neck, and sometimes even meditating to hold my head up feels like it's a ton of bricks. So my body is really not comfortable. It's in Capricorn, so there's all that solidification and concretization. So then I was looking at Neptune as the higher ruler, and Neptune is in the 5th house. So I thought, well, is this the Christ principle? Is this soul? Is this, that is not maybe coming through because my form is too conflicted.
All right, this morning what we did was we meditated. Michael took us through a really beautiful meditation, and if you were following with us, and I hope you did it, we used an Antakarana technique and imagined that we were on the higher planes, and we attempted to intuit a symbol which would really help bring about healing. After doing all the studying, it was hoped that the Mercury would work with Neptune perhaps, and to help us bring through a symbol for the purpose of reconciling this. So tell us about your meditation experience.
Okay. As I saw that there was the shaft of light coming from above, so from, I guess, the plane of Buddhi, and Neptune is how I saw the shaft of light coming down and then landing on top of what looked like an igloo with its squares, with the mortar in between it. Very, very Capricorn, right? And it was the opposite of what a moon is, so it was an igloo. And the shaft of light was literally melting away, dissolving the form. And it started to get better and better, right, as it started to dissolve. And then we were asked to find a point of reconciliation between the two of them. So this igloo then turned itself around and moved up, I guess, into the center between the two, and became a vessel, became a chalice that was then filled with light. And so my form, my body, then became a vehicle for the light to shine through.
See, it does. So did you feel, we know that the intuition works from Buddhi to your astral, through our astral, so did you feel the energy? Did you feel an energy?
I did. I actually was moved to tears. Yeah. I could feel in my spine different centers radiating heat. So it was quite good.
It sounds wonderful. Now, I haven't got your chart, but you know it, Eva. Eva is one of the faculty in Moira Federation, and you know your chart. So how would you can you relate the symbol that you received and your experience to your chart?
Well, yeah, the moon was represented by this igloo,
Okay.
right, in Capricorn, so there was this form, very formed, concrete, and the shaft of light was coming from Booty, and one of the planets that is associated with Booty is Neptune. So Neptune also is square the moon, and then they formed this symbol that, as I said, was a chalice. And if you look at a chalice, it's almost representative of Neptune, right?
Yeah, that's right.
The trident. It's just lacking those 3 points in the middle. So that chalice is very, very Neptune.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any comment, anything to share about that? Any thoughts intuitively that come up? What I thought was that with the chalice, it's like the Holy Grail. And we know that DK says the Holy Grail is the purified physical, emotional and mental bodies. And when you're talking about your body, that was the thought that came to me about it. So, yeah. All right. So, and in the future, are you tending to work with this, do you think?
Yes, and I'm actually going to seek out some therapy too. So I will have both.
Okay. Did you get any words of power? We were asked to try and hear word of power.
I did.
Would you like to share that?
What I received was, I am the light of light itself.
Oh, which sign does that relate to? Do you remember?
Is it Aries? Is it Aries? No, I am the light of life itself. I'm sorry. I am the light of life itself. I think it's Aries. We just did Aries.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, thank you for that and for sharing that. It's good stuff. All right, thank you, Eva. And what we'll do is we'll go through, because we've got quite a few, and then if we've got time at the end, we'll have a group discussion. Perhaps we'll close the chairs up a bit so it can be a little less formal. You've got a microphone. Would you like to then also share, perhaps start with your conflict that you've identified and what it is astrologically?
Okay.
And introduce yourself to them.
Okay. I'm Carla Brandau. I certainly don't have the visualization techniques that we have over here. I don't see things quite this as easily or in the same way. Chart-wise, I'm taking a Venus square Uranus, second house, 11th house. But Venus is extremely instrumental in this chart because it's the depositor of 4 other planets. So I'm sure the conflict reverberates through the entire chart. And I look at this in many respects because we also go over to the 7th house. It's my, perhaps, verbalization to people. I'm not inclined to do it. The Venus is in Virgo. I'll wait till everything is perfect and then I'll speak. So I don't speak, very simply. So that's...
Your experience in your symbol? In your meditation?
Yeah, the experience was... the symbol is a ball of fire. Okay. And so it just came down, sat in the Venus and burned it up. Which, and replaced it, if you will, in a sense. It's positioned there now and it'll function. And the word was life. Okay.
Do you have an understanding of the rays? Can you relate it to any ray?
Only one.
Yeah, ray 1.
Yes.
Thank you. And what were the words of power?
Life.
Life, just life.
Life, that's all. It's a synthesizing energy.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And did you actually feel it energetically in your fields as it was working?
No, but I probably wouldn't. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to?
I think that's it. For me, it's short. Like I said, I don't visualize, I don't symbolize, I don't see color, various things like that. It's just pure energy.
Right. Are you that familiar with your chart? Because the ball of fire perhaps would be looking, I would think, just intuitively would look for ray 1 planet, perhaps Vulcan in there. Are you familiar with your chart?
Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
Okay, do you think that Vulcan could be tied in with it, being the sacred planet that ray 1 comes through?
It may well be. It sits with, it's at 11 degrees of Libra, so it is conjunct the Jupiter, conjunct Chiron, and of course, close to the
Is
sun.
it tied into that aspect? What was it, Venus, Uranus?
In as much as Venus is a depositor of Vulcan.
I see. All right. Venus and Uranus is up there in
Gemini.
In Gemini. Okay, there's no obvious connection I can think of. But I would think if Vulcan, we had an interesting discussion about the actual location of Vulcan in the chart. I've always, the safest way I think to work with it is to work with it as coming through the sun and the moon. And the moon is always, as Eva worked with the moon in her chart, Ray 4 comes through the moon, and it is a non-sacred planet, and it represents the prison of the soul pattern. So I also think that that's an important part of the chart for anyone to look at. I mean, we all know this if we've been doing an astrology, but I would think that perhaps if the Vulcan impression, I would look for the moon placement there as being tied in with that pattern and something to do, and it's the moon in Sagittarius, and it's something perhaps you may ponder over. It might be meaningful for you. It's just something.
Well, that Venus also squares the moon.
Okay, well then that's really, yes.
T-square.
Yeah. Okay, that's wonderful because it really does bring Vulcan in. And I would think, and what's your name again?
Carla.
Carla has the moon in the 4th house, and I know there are many astrologers watching, and so that really, it's very close to the 5th house, which is children, but home and family life would be triggering the pattern in Carla, and so applying, I would think, that Vulcanian fire to that area of your life might be, I'm sure you've thought of that, but also as well as in your intimate relationships with Venus represents to your extended family and parent relationships as well, I would suggest for that placement. What do you think, Eva? Yeah, I like that. Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Carla.
You're welcome.
That's wonderful. And I'll ask Gail now. So what is your point of conflict and where is it in your chart? Gail, or would you?
I continue to work with the Mars square Sun, South Node, and Pluto, but we'll look at that as a stellium. And I experience this as occasional fiery activity that is not always as rational as I would like it to be. There's a positive side to that because I work with large organizations and I'm a very good speaker. I'm a charismatic speaker, so I channel it that way. And that's the good part. But when it gets out of control, there's that fiery blast of temper that usually lands in some sort of verbal mischief. Let's just say mischief. I have a 4-3 mind, so I visualize very easily. And first I saw the cross, and I suspect it's a fixed cross, and I visualized it as electric blue. And then I asked the question, well, what is the reconciliation of the problem? And I got the arrow. And the arrow, of course, to me signals Sagittarius, which is a sign of my moon. And I thought, oh no, not more fire. How do I have to deal with more fire? And that is exactly what I need to do, to use the highest aspect of Sagittarius, idealism, and to always remember to see the Christ in every situation. And my little technique is to, if I'm having a difficult time with someone, I look at them and I say, you are the Christ, you are the Christ, you are the Christ. That settles everything right down. So I need to think a little bit more about the Sagittarius moon and how to use that more creatively. I think I've shied away from thinking about it. I put so much attention on the Sun and Pluto that I don't always think about how can I best use that moon energy. The words of power that I got, this is so funny, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition, which I learned to sing as a child during the war. And I think, praising the Lord in every situation is really the way. And the ammunition is the ammunition of the soul and all the techniques that we learn from esoteric astrology.
Wonderful interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, oh, yes, so I could still be a fighter and a scrapper and a warrior. but to use it in the most, channeled way possible, which doesn't always happen, but, one must continue to work on it.
Thank you. Before you pass it on, Gail, tell us a little bit about the organisation with the woman. When Gail said she's working with a large organisation, she's really serious about it. Just a few words.
My husband and I work through a foundation that funds the Women Peacemaker program at the University of San Diego's Institute for Peace and Justice. And I've spoken about this program many times here at the conference. We bring 4 women to the United States from areas of conflict, and they tell their stories. And from their stories, we gain best practices, what really works in wartime situations and in peace building afterwards. So that is the crux of our work. We also have a project in Israel with Palestinians and Jews trying to find a way to create some sort of commercial product that could become a peace product. So our projects are really out there in the world, and we stay back and manage them with the university by funding them, and we have some oversight activity, but I don't go off to the far corners too often. Once in a while, but not too often.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I was just looking at your chart with the moon in Sagittarius. The esoteric ruler is the Earth in Capricorn in the 5th house. And so that's very interesting because the university can be considered to be a Capricornian type of structure, and it is also Sagittarius with the relationship to the 9th house. So it seems to me that also working in a very creative way, as I know that you do, and your work with the Moira Federation online school also is another way you're working with it, and working with students here. Like I interpret the 5th house as work with young souls, and perhaps there's other ways. It really is a house of Leo and a house of love and creativity. So I really see that you're doing that and doing naturally what will help you to resolve your 4th house stuff and the history that you have coming through there.
I want to say that with students, I tend to be very gentle. Rarely do I use that energy with our students.
I was really surprised when you said that, because I've never seen, I know we've only had an online contact, but I've never known that about you. I'm glad you shared that. I'll watch my steps. We'll go over here. All right, Karen, would you like to pass me your chart? And perhaps. Good, thank you. I prefer that.
I like this one too.
Thanks. Just introduce yourself, please.
I'm Karen Gritzka.
And your pattern, the conflict?
Well, what I was working with was my moon in Cancer, which we talked about yesterday. It's at the top of my chart. And it's also, the moon is also square my ascendant, which is Libra. So,
and from that, how has that translated into your life as a point of conflict? How's it trigger? What sort of conflict has it triggered?
well, the emotions.
Then we discussed the 10th house as being the professional point, and in working with many people over the years who've had that, what I have seen, and Karen also identified with us to some regard, was that it often indicates an age-old pattern of sometimes feeling that you really need to put yourself up there, do well professionally, and do things perfectly to get the approval of people. That's so very important. And Karen shared with us that she'd obviously done a lot of work with that. So that was the one way that we talked about that sort of played out. So how was the meditation this morning, and what was your symbol?
Well, the symbol that came to me in meditation was a yoke, a wooden yoke around my neck and on my shoulders with 2 buckets of water. And at first the feeling I had about it was like, oh no, this was like heavy, not cool, not what I wanted to see. I know it well. But and then I was reminded of something my brothers used to say to me when I would come home from school, and they would say, "Oh, here comes Karen, bring out the tear buckets."
Oh.
You know, I had a teacher who particularly upset me. But anyway, so I was thinking, well, maybe that water is maybe tears as well. So then that was transformed into the scales of Libra and in gold and very light. So there was nothing on them. There was nothing on the scales. It was just beautiful golden scales, a scale. And words, the words of power that came to me were, well, the way between or the middle path, and it's the light that moves to rest. So the scales go this, to be kind of visual, it goes this way. The light that moves to rest kind of goes this way. And then there's a still point in there that I often call slack tide. I've experienced on the ocean. I know it when that's still point.
Thank you for that. There was a meditation that a teacher gave us for Libra, which I think Karen has Neptune in Libra, and was that something that you were thinking of when you were doing that? Because that's, I mean, you were talking about the Libra.
Was I thinking of Neptune?
No, Libra. The middle path.
Oh, Libra, yes. I was thinking of, yes. Yes, the scales are certainly, that's the symbol for, that's the symbol for Libra.
Okay.
So I was thinking about that.
Thanks. Does anyone get any impressions? Would you like to share? What about the yoke around your shoulders? I thought the buckets of water, I thought that you explained that. What about the yoke?
I don't know.
Oh, well, I thought it fitted in with that 10th house moon. And it's almost as if the impression I got, and please, if you've got any thoughts, share them. But I thought it could be that you're carrying, the thought that came to me is carrying the weight of the world for your family. Because it moons in Cancer, and there is some obligation, I don't know whether consciously or unconsciously, and it could have come from a past life, but feeling a need to carry the weight and responsibility for your family.
I have one thing to add.
Yes.
When you said the scales were golden and light, I was thinking about the symbol in Egypt at the end of your life. Your life is weighed against a feather, and your life needs to be as light as the feather to enter into the kingdom of light and God. And I thought that there's a progression here from the heaviness
Right.
to the lightness.
Well, I thought about a feather. I mean, the thought occurred to me of a feather, but it wasn't there. I mean, the thought occurred, and I saw a visual feather, but it wasn't on the scale. Yeah. Right. You see the feather? I see the feather as you're speaking. Oh, yes, I did see it, so that you mentioned it is interesting.
And to build on that, the image that came to me when you actually asked the question about the yoke was the yoke is light. Instead of a heavy yoke, a light yoke, that the yoke sits on your shoulders lightly, not heavily, doesn't weigh you down anymore. It's light. And, in terms of weight as well as light.
Yeah, it's getting lighter. I believe. But
Could be.
The first image that came was that old one.
Mhm.
That was what first came.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is getting lighter.
And with its being tied into the family, it might pay at some time to really look at your relationship with your family, because I think that there are some ties that you're carrying that you no longer need to carry.
Oh, yeah.
And actually doing your exercise of mentally cutting strings would, I'm sure you're doing this already.
Oh, I've done a great deal of work with as I'm following you, I wasn't totally sure.
did the yoke turn into the scale right on your shoulders? Or was the scale out?
Oh, actually, it wasn't on me, I don't think. I don't think. But that's a good question. I don't remember.
Because, you know, those scales being lighter are also balancing time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So you may have worked off a lot of it.
I believe that. I think that's correct.
And building on what Gail was saying, said so beautifully about that, of course, with you and the work that you're doing, we haven't got the moon sitting up in the 10th house on the MC anymore, it's Neptune. Neptune is the esoteric ruler of Cancer, and Neptune is that the most beautiful, of course, as you know, of spiritual love and the Christ. So also along with that other vision, it's a possibility of thinking Neptune as being up there, as the Christ sitting up there as well. And that might help do what Helena was suggesting and dissolving that culture. Thank you for sharing with us. So it was wonderful. Do you have, yes, introduce yourself.
Yes. My name is Helena Bach-Hughes. I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area. Hello, everyone. All right. So the, you know, I have a tough time reading my chart with all those wheels.
Me too.
Yeah. So I've asked one, but not in time for this exercise. So I believe I'm recalling. Well, first of all, I looked at my Saturn conjunct Mars in the 10th house, and I believe it's square my Venus. But so I just primarily looked at that conjunction of Mars Saturn, which for me has it's like conflicting energies right there. You have the Saturn exacting Saturn, you have the higher laws of Saturn, which there I always experience the freedom as I live in these higher laws. There's profound freedom, but the lower Saturn with this energetic Mars, and I see this played out in my life, not only my own instrument, but in the fact that I'm married to an Aries, and I seem to have a lot of Aries people around me, and I also have my moon in Aries. So there's this very fiery energy of Mars and this very, exacting, controlling, disciplining Saturn. And so how to reconcile these energies? So the image that came to my mind was actually two images, Venus, and I have Venus in Pisces, so there's this beautiful quality of beauty and love. So I actually looked at the sigil of Venus, and I held it as an ankh, and I just brought it right in as a magical instrument, which I actually had an experience in my youth, my 20s, of Venus as an ankh, and I didn't even know it was Venus at the time. I just knew it was an ankh. And I was using it energetically to draw energy and bring energy in. And then I also saw Neptune, which is at the top of my chart, and very much like you, Eva, Neptune for me is like a beautiful cup which carries the Christ consciousness. And I've often related to it also as the Holy Grail. So as this cup is filled with this very high quality of energy, I simply brought that to reconcile this conflict between Saturn and Mars.
That's wonderful. And were there words of power?
Words of power.
Yeah.
Everything is holy now. And then everything is whole. So holy is whole. Everything is holy now, or everything is whole. And that's the Neptune aspect.
Okay. And how did you feel energetically? Did you feel it in your fields?
Yes, where I primarily felt it was in the heart of the head. So it was as if my head was the cauldron, and the peace in the mind. That was another thought that came through, was the mind of peace, the mind of tranquility, whenever I feel this Martian energetic. Right. I relate with what you're saying. Yeah, that was primarily it. Everything is whole. Everything is whole now.
Thank you. Then would anyone like to share? Have any impressions? What I like to do when we're talking about patterns and either, and I'm sure you all do, is look for the esoteric ruler of the sign that the pattern is in. And we have Sagittarius here, and so Saturn and Mars are both conjunct in Sagittarius. And the esoteric ruler of Sagittarius, as we know, is the Earth, and it's in Cancer in the 7th house. So have you thought about what that means for you? I know that was not part of your meditation, but now as an astrologer, what have you learned about that? With the esoteric ruler.
Thank you. In Cancer, I haven't thought about that before, and for that particular configuration.
Yes, it's group sharing. The Earth is all about group sharing.
Group sharing. Yeah, okay.
And
with the Cancer there.
And with being very nurturing in your group sharing, which you always have been.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in your intimate one-on-one relationships, professional as well as intimate and personal. So I would say as an astrologer, one way to assess how that is working out is to really look at how you are relating intimately in your one-on-one relationships, and that we did some work yesterday primarily with the moon, and so one is more aware of what's going on in the 10th house because you can see it and we have a lot of investment in it as well. But I wondered whether that you could relate to that, what I just said, and share any thoughts?
Well, that I attempt to bring love into my relationships, whatever that is. So bringing the tranquil heart, the peaceful mind, the loving soul into all relationships. That's how I would actively work with it, and seeing the light or the Christ in the other. Always seeing that, no matter what is being presented or faced with, even anger or irritation, I go behind that and see what's really behind that, what's true there, what's really true.
What I've seen Alina do is she has the vision, whatever the vision is, and she grounds it. She grounds it in a relationship or in a group. So there's a tendency to do that.
And with the Earth.
I'm compelled to add something. Helena works on this conference, and I've watched her now for 12 years. And she comes and starts work, and everything has to be beautiful, and it has to be right. And if it isn't right, it will be right. It's that Venus and Saturn coming together in a very practical way, a very loving way. But her vision is to make this a beautiful experience for all of us. And it plays out, and she works so hard to do that. It's not easy.
We reap the benefits.
We do.
We do reap the benefits. Thank you for sharing. Introduce yourself.
I'm Delina D. And I didn't want the conflict that I chose, but because we worked with the moon, something compelled me to stay with that. And I have my moon opposed my sun, 2nd house, 9th house. And in the meditation, the first image that came was a dragonfly. And it represented to me the body being matter form, and then the wings being spirit. And I haven't thought completely through this, but there's 4 wings, and I'm not that seems symbolic of something, whether that is the 4th ray, or that those thoughts have not completed yet. So, and then and I've always had that structural piece has really been a major player in my life, no matter what it is. You know, whether it's doing it right, yeah, all those things with that Capricorn. And then the image that it turned into was the Venus de Milo, which really surprised me. And so my first impression was that, okay, I used the energy of Venus. Maybe that's what that's asking me to do. And then I kind of looked at, well, this is a representation of beauty. But I was, on the side, it was like, but she's stone. This is still another representation of Capricorn. So there's something there that I need to work with to bring the beauty out of Capricorn, I think. So,
Thank you. I'd like to get impressions. Any impressions, sharings about her visions?
Well, I'll say I'm a double Capricorn, so I relate with what you're saying, and there is that supernal light in Capricorn, and the hierarchical ruler is Venus. So you have this beautiful light of Venus that, as a hierarchical ruler, it's full of life, light, bounty, juiciness. There's nothing stone about Venus as the hierarchical ruler. And the higher you go up the mountain, you know, you're faced with that supernal, drenching life. So I would just say it's there. Just access it, attune to it. It's there. It's present. It's there now. It's there in your potential. And you probably do access it more than you know. That's all I would say.
Thank you.
I also was kind of struck by the two images. One of them is so light and airy, and the other one is so heavy and concrete. So it's a matter of finding that, you know, being able to lift the other thing so it is light and airy.
Did you want to share? I just wanted to say something about the dragonfly. I thought of these five make a man perfect, and it represents the five planes of physical, emotional, mental, Buddhic, and atmic. And I thought of the dragonfly, four wings with a body. I saw it as five, not four, and that. But however, I thought it was a beautiful symbol of spirituality and a potential to become masters. Like there was mastership in that. And I also thought when you were talking about Venus de Milo, because I made the same connection that you did, and because Capricorn has so much to do with initiation. And having the moon in that sign, I would. Does anyone have any thoughts about what that might mean in relation to initiation in this regard? Yeah, what I intuitively thought is that perhaps the offer has been made for you before on the path, and you've blocked it out of fear or for some reason or other, and that the opportunity has been offered to you again in this life. So it's just a thought. Any other thoughts? Right, thank you. It was wonderful. And Sandra, you just introduced yourself. Sandra. Thanks.
I'm Sandra Harrison, I'm from Canada. The conflict, we were working with moon yesterday, and so I was looking at my Aries moon in the 10th. And
you can share the how it played out in your life if you like.
The Aries moon, like
yeah, remember how it played out in the fifth house. It has a relationship with the fifth house.
yeah. I mean, we're also looking at Mercury and Scorpio, which I'm less familiar with.
I'm sorry. We had some fun in our group yesterday, but I'm sorry, I put you on the spot.
Well, that was Mercury and Scorpio, I think, and the Aries moon. I was looking at both of them because I really am not as familiar with the Mercury and
So a
Scorpio.
day after the workshop we did yesterday, what are your thoughts about that moon in Aries then in the 10th?
Well, as you were saying, it's a double whammy because it's an Aries moon and in the 10th. And I think as you mentioned before...
And it's Ceres here, the asteroid Ceres with it, which is sort of related to the moon as well, being maternal in a sense.
Mm-hmm. And the Mercury in Scorpio is conjunct Chiron in the 5th.
Yes.
So you were saying the theory of mothering, and I'm a Cancer rising, Sun Sagittarius, so the whole thing of having a difficult mothering, multi-handicap, what is mothering, what is an Aries moon doing, trying to dominate or control and letting go, and then becoming the world mother as the Cancer. And so, and I've also physically been working in the last year with a core of tension. Of tension. You know, then I've been working with body work and just that tension within me, which I'm guessing was stemming from the mothering, the tension of wanting to be, this longing to be acceptable, the longing to, the tension of wanting to be good enough, to be lovable. And when I worked when I was in the meditation, Ray 7 personality always. And Ray 7 personality, I always have Violet and the Indigo and the Ray 2 in all my meditations a lot. And what I got, the image I got was, I felt energy pouring down through me and then right down through to the spine, you know, and then rising up again to the throat and the heart, and just this powerful stream of light from me to the other, and just really feeling that whole area lit up and just and the words I got were speak the words of love, but it was a very powerful shaft of light coming from me to whoever the other is.
It's so interesting because the esoteric ruler of Aries, as we know, is Mercury, and it is in Scorpio in the 5th house, and because Mercury has so much to do with speaking. We know that Saturn rules the throat chakra, but Mercury represents communications of all sorts and on all levels. And so it absolutely relates astrologically to what you just said then. And speaking the words of love, Mercury is in the 5th house of love. We know that it symbolizes the double love petal in the egoic lotus in the second tier of love petals. So very much for you it is. And we know perhaps it is in the 5th house, so speaking the words of love to younger souls and children and that. But I also always think with these moon patterns that we first have to relate that back to ourselves. And so I would think that perhaps there is a level within you that really needs that I mean, other people can hear the words of love, but somehow it was really needing to come from you because, as I said before, one of the things I've noticed about the 10th house people, moon in 10th house, is that they really have a need to put themselves up there to get respect, to feel they have to be successful in the world, have to be first and best, especially with Aries, here the first sign, first and best. And what happened to Aries in particular, running away from some fear, some underlying insecurity or something. And so by proving that they are the best, and that really helps them deal with a problem right up front, but it doesn't, of course, they're running away from the real issue, which is feeling that, you know, you are being unloved or something like that. Because Mercury in the 5th house of love is really, and you intuitive beautifully speak the words of love. And I would suggest it's saying to yourself, yes. Okay, any other thoughts? I thought that you addressed that really beautifully. All All right, well, thank you for that. We've gone through that really quickly. How much longer have we got, Greg? Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, I'm so glad. I was going to use my pattern, as I'd like to get away from that. All right, so I would perhaps just repeat some. I had three of the ladies here in the group yesterday when we were trying to identify the major pattern. I don't work with aspects. When I look at conflict in a chart, I work with the planets Moon, Mercury, and Mars. And the fourth ray of harmony through conflict, or just the ray of conflict as DK calls it, comes through Mercury and the Moon. And so those two planets are really symbolise the conflict in life, and Mars is always trouble, always brings conflict. So I look at that. And of course the Moon pattern, I think that in everybody's chart is the major point of conflict, because it is the pattern we've been carrying around for lifetimes, and it's become embedded. The Moon, as we know, symbolises our form, and so the pattern has become embedded in the substance of our body. So the physical elemental, for example, is dancing out that pattern and always is wanting to act it out, and it comes out really easily because it is an unconscious pattern. So whenever we are afraid, whenever a negative core belief is triggered, because I think that the Moon symbolises what they call in psychology the negative core belief. DK said that the Moon represents a very ancient thought form, and that's what a negative core belief is. It's an old thought form that we have been repeating negatively to ourselves and telling ourselves, and because the ego doesn't like to be thought bad, a negative thought form is core belief is something like I am bad, I am unlovable. It's a very simple phrase that we learn to tell ourselves when we are children, to when things happen to us. So very often, there are two main groups. One is I am unlovable, and the second one, I am insufficient. And then there are a whole lot of versions of that. So for myself, mine, I believe, was something like, I'm just not good enough. I am not good enough, so it's in the I'm unlovable. And I can remember I was born 8th child and 12 children. And our mother was very tired, and our mother, I don't think that she should have had 12 children, because she became like, she was wonderful, but she became like an army general. And so it was like a very military thing, and there wasn't much love and affection when we got to 8th, and so with every mum shoveling us around and the older sisters pushing us around, I really felt really unlovable. And there I had Moon and Libra in the 12th house, and there it is. And I used to try and hide away to get away from my mother. I used to hide behind my siblings, and that I used to try and disappear. And so I always work with the Moon as being the major source of conflict, and I don't bother with aspects. So if the Moon has got a hard aspect to it, well enough, but I have no hard aspects to my Moon. I've got a set style to Mars and Jupiter in the 10th house, but that is my pattern, you see. So based on that, I'll just have a look at you. Yeah, that's right. So, and we have a wonderful astrologer here. She's going to help do this. So we have Moon in Capricorn in the 6th house. So we had, who else has got the Moon in Capricorn in this group? You do, so too. So did you relate to anything that, that's right. Did you relate to that? Okay. Well, Moon at okay. Well, we have a double thing here with the 6th house. I really like working with the 6th house. It's the house of duty. It really is the house of duty. Dane Rudger said it was the house between the 5th and the 7th. It's the portal into the higher, into relationships. It's the house between youthfulness and our teenage life and marriage and that. And so it's when we leave home and we realise that we have to work hard if we're going to eat, and that there are responsibilities there, and that not everyone is going to like us, and that we have to do things perhaps that we would rather not do to survive or to be well thought of. And because Moon in Capricorn is ultra responsible, and really feels, I would have to do this. And in your case, it's an unconscious thing. It's buried in your psyche, and this is why you're having probably the physical ailments you're having. There is some negative core belief involved in that. In order to be accepted by others, I have to do this. But the negative core belief would be something like, I am unlovable, and if I don't be responsible, if I don't meet what I'm required or being asked to do, therefore I will be judged. And with Capricorns, I'll probably be put into jail, or there could have been in any past life some terrible result of you supposedly not meeting your duty, though that was not your judgment, it was somebody else's. And there's suffering has come from that. I really do think our negative core beliefs have stemmed, it does represent the past, and I often, sometimes when I'm doing readings with people, it invokes a past life image. I don't usually work with that at all, but if it comes up, I generally ask people, to do some positive work like we've been doing today to try and dissolve it. But I would look, Eva, what I would say to you as an astrologer, I'm going to ask everyone else to give their opinions. I would ask you to look at your life and perhaps what you could, and prioritize it. What is an absolute, everything that you do, and give it a list it, because I know you're really good at organising, and perhaps look at something that you can let go of. Just start with one thing. What is it that I feel that I have to do, that I'm really responsible for, but it is way down in the list of priority, and assess whether you really have to do it. Does that make sense? Is that meaningful to you? Okay, I would expect that with being the moon. I would also think with that there's a lot of tradition coming from the past, and I know your background is tied up with that. Yeah, okay, yeah, that's true. Would anyone like to please share as well with a lot of time? Any other thoughts about Moon and Capricorn in the 6th house? Yes, it is. Well, we didn't come to that.
Oh, because I work with Ava, I see such a dedication to service and commitment to doing things right, somewhat like my friend over here. And I think that the letting go of the need to get it right would bring some liberation. I mean, what you do is magnificent, period. I don't think you need to justify it. I don't think you need to overwork it, and to trust. I think trust might go along with that. Trusting that your expression is perfect. Because to me, that's how we see you, the two of you. This is how we see both of you, as hard workers, and everything turns out just right. And I'm not sure that you see it that way.
Just stay with the mic for a moment there, because Eva has an aspect from the Moon to Neptune. So here's the trust thing you see coming in. So she has a square. So here is the idealism, and it's in Libra. I love beauty, and I want everything to be balanced and beautiful. And then she has this other side of her that's duty-bound, and so that's at the basis of the pattern there, and as well. So,
well, just that Neptune, just the dissolving of the rigidity, the flowing into it, and knowing that it's perfect. That's what I sense in that Neptune.
Anybody else? What about the healthy? Oh, sorry.
Neptune and Libra. I used to say Libra. My moon's in the 10th, and the Neptune and Libra's in the 4th. I don't know if that's relation, but it seems to be similar.
It would be, because the 4th house is the moon's house as well, so it would be. There's something that you inherited down a family line. Often with the moon, it's via the mother. It is in your case. Yeah, yeah.
I can use those as that expression.
Yeah. So what do they call that when the emotional boundaries have gone? It's like an incestual thing, and they call it that. All right. So as with regards to health then, so the 6th house does rule health, and the sign on the 6th house cusp and any planets in it really do symbolize potential health problems for us. And so we have the moon in Capricorn, so we have Capricorn, and what is that, Scorpio? Oh, you've an intercepted Sagittarius in there as well. So we have, it's very interesting, you shared with us that you're having, you know, this difficulty with the body, and I was thinking when, Sandra, you were talking about body work, I wanted to say at that point, I have found myself when I have conflict, and that going to a really good massager and having a wonderful massage really does help shift it like that. And I was thinking, I know you would be doing this, but I was just thinking that even though we work esoterically and work so much with our meditation there, I also think that we can work from externally, and I know we would all agree with this, and having a really good massage and all sorts of body work is so essential. So
I've been doing that for the past year,
okay,
and
good.
if anything, it's worse now than it was. So
And how do you explain it? Have you thought?
I don't know. I haven't. That's why this is a relatively new thing. This is not
The progressions now, yeah.
No, this is a relatively new thing. I'd say the past year. So I don't understand why my body's reacting this way.
Oh, well, what we have in, if everyone can look at the chart, look at this lineup of progressed planets have moved into the 6th house of Eva. She has 3 planets plus potential Vulcan, and the South Node is in there. But the Sun, Venus and Mercury are in the 6th house as well. And so that's why really perhaps it is certainly is related to that. And I'm just looking for transits to see what has triggered it. Oh, there it is. There, you've got Uranus squaring it. Uranus in the 10th house has been squaring it. The 10th house is so much to do with our duties, and I intuitively thought of the school, Moria Federation, all the weight that you're carrying with that. It could be something that we could discuss between us about that, and perhaps we can help in some way.
Yeah, first of all, we're born one day apart. Okay, so I'm a little bit familiar with the chart, but what you have had in the last year is you have had Pluto transit that moon and the node, the south node. Yeah.
Now that it's already passed, all of a sudden it is.
Right, and now she's talking about the Uranus is coming to it. Okay, so in other words, there's a certain degree of activity here. First of all, there was a conjunction. Now there's the square with it. But Plutonian transits are deep, okay, and long-lasting for starters. That moon is also at an Aries point of 00 Capricorn, so it's highly activated initially anyway at all times. Its need is to administrate and to deploy resources efficiently, and that's how you give love. And I suppose, so one of the questions is, do people appreciate you for that? Do you get the love that you want from it? Okay. So those are other needs of that moon, okay, that you can question. But that Pluto transit itself would have deeply affected that, I would expect.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I've noticed there's something else really important going on. I was glad you were speaking, not only were you being really wise, but I was looking for what it could be. And we have solar arc Saturn is exactly square it. It's just it's exactly square the point. And it's just entered into Libra because the moon is at 0 degrees of Capricorn, and it's just entered into that. This chart doesn't have the minutes on it, but we can work later and have a look at it, because you can work out just how long it's going to take. It's also going to cross over the South Node, but I think the primary square and the tension is there. And so, and you're a wonderful astrologer, but we're going to help you with this, and all of us, and look at this. But it's Saturn provides the opportunity. So you're being provided with an opportunity to rid yourself of some baggage that has been weighing you down. And you are right in the, and I would look at it as, yes, you are in it, and your body is really reacting to it, but I would advise you not to worry about that, and worry about and think about what's going on in your psychology and how you're viewing things, and look at from what you can detach, because it's all you are needing to detach yourself from responsibilities that are not yours, that really are not yours. You assume them and you carry them because of who you are, and you want to please people. You're absolutely wonderful, good person. And well, I know from being on the faculty, I know if I would say, could you please, take the student that, and Eva always stepped up to the plate, and she would take student after student, and from everyone like that. And I said, how does she do it? And I can't remember who it was. She must have a lot of free time. She can't be working. And this, just a casual thing. But we have seen that, and I've really admired you. And like the other ladies there, we've just sort of see you function at such a highly, beautifully organised level. I thought, how does she do it? But it's time to really have a look at that, because the fact is that that is your moon pattern. There is something there that's weighing you down, and it's having this impact on you. I wouldn't worry about it. In a year or two, it's going to be over. Yeah. Look at it as an opportunity. You really have to, you have a choice. You're either going to go into the fear of it, which is lower Saturn, or you're going to face the opportunity. You're on the path, and Saturn and Mercury rule the path like that. And the great Lord, and he really works with the Lords of Love, and they're asking you to look at it in a different way. And they ask you with love to do that. And we will talk a lot more about this, if you like. Okay.
And all that fiber can't say no. Yeah. Right. So you have to decide that.
I wish I had the Sabian symbols here. I want to look at that Sabian symbol. Let's see what it is. I do. I've spent quite some time at playing with them earlier in my career to see if they had any value. And once I interpreted my whole chart with Sabian symbols, I just went, and you can read them sequentially. Start from Aries and go through. They will tell a story. They will tell a story about it. And Dane Rudger is the best one. He gives a personality interpretation and the higher one, and you can choose which one relates to you. But I have found that from that experience of reading my own chart, I thought there's something in this. And Dane Rudger was so struck with him. Of course, he was a disciple of the Tibetans, and he was so struck with him that he got permission from, I'm not sure if it was from the astrologer, Mark Egman Jones, or from the lady who did it, but got permission to put his own interpretation upon them, you see. And so it's just, I use them, and I gave my talk and how I use them, so I find them invaluable. I don't use them that often, but I think, no, I take that back. Every time I do what I think is a reading for a talk or a paper I'm writing or something, I always look for Sabian symbols, because I think it also gives insight and colour to what we are presenting. And that, like for example, when I was, I thought that, as we know, the degree of the rising sign is very important for our spiritual journey. So I wanted a Christ degree, that the chart and degree that I had selected for him, I thought it had to be meaningful and fitted in with his life. And a young girl happily shopping for her mother, I thought, oh gosh, does that really fit in that? But you have to really work with it and use your imagination. I got that flash of the young Jesus stepping out and saying, I'm going about my Father's business, just flipping it over. So I think that there is some real magic in them, and I love them, and I work with them. They might suit you, they may not. Okay. Would anyone else like to add to what we've been saying? Yeah. Yes, there's so much going on with that, so I think that perhaps later we might have a little sharing, and anyone else who wants to come in, and I'd like to get the chart up on my computer so I can see it in the way I read it, because I'm very intuitive, but I find I can't read that. Usually I will just look at a chart and I can read it, but I have to really look through all the detail and try and find what I want to find. So it just slows the process down. Yeah, well, that's right. I was really happy to see that. I could, see that patterns increase.
When you were watching our webinar, what we're talking about the 3 wheels.
Oh,
We are looking at a chart that has the basic natal chart and the secondary progressions and then the transits. So we have 3 wheels and the 4 wheels. So the natal chart is in the center and it's very tiny and we don't see any aspects. So that's why we're saying we're having trouble reading them because there's a lot of information on what we're looking at.
thank you for Gail. We're just admiring you and talking about perfection. I thought that was perfect, the explanation. So thank you. So becoming an astrologer, and this theme of this conference is the intuition, and so the Tibetans said that the way to develop the intuition is the study of symbols. So I thought if anyone has a love of astrology, we're automatically developing our intuition, our Mercury aspect, and because we read symbols. So, and I assume that most people would be familiar with astrology. So it takes years, really, to learn how to read a chart unless you've got some great skill, which means you've probably been an astrologer in your past life. I know it took me quite a while to fifth grade remember what each planet means. The actual merging of it I didn't find so hard myself, but I really did find that I became less emotional and a more intuitive, less astral plane, a more Buddhic plane, though I'm only touching it, as I studied astrology. My spiritual development really started going forward because I was starting to really think, and of course it was a masterful tool for insightfulness. We're told, man, know thyself. And all of a sudden, instead of thinking that I was a horrible person, I could see, oh, I've got Mars and Leo, so that's where it comes from. The same thing happened with the rays when I realised I had a Ray 1 personality. It's not really that I'm a horrible person, I'm just a really good person dealing with this horrible energy, or that, that's the way it comes out. So, but I found that, working with astrology, and everyone who's ever come to me for counselling with astrology, especially if they have not had an astrology reading before from an esoteric counsellor, that they went away feeling so much better about themselves because they saw their problems in a piece of paper over here and they could detach from it and they could look at it and they could analyse it with their mind, with the astrologer's help. And that, of course, is the technique of detachment, of right detachment. So in that process that we do when we work with people, we study our own chart, we're practicing right detachment. Because we have to really think, now what does this mean? You have to get in your left brain to really figure that out. And then get into our right brain to think, now how do I feel about this? And what does it mean for me? So you get the facts, but then you say, what does this mean for me? So one of the things I like to ask people when they're doing this sort of meditation we had this morning, how did you feel? How did you feel? Because the intuition, the Buddhic plane is a feeling plane. It's the higher feeling, and I know you all know this is mainly for this, but it's the higher feeling plane, but we have to have a purified or balanced emotional astral body to be able to really understand and feel and interpret that correctly. We interpret with our mind, but also with our astral body. And I heard Michael in his talk this morning, or was it in the meditation, he mentioned that we have to bring that our impressions through into our astral body as well as through our mind. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yes, I think it reflects down. For example, when I had that image with the cauldron of Neptune in my head, or the heart of the head, I could, even as I was speaking, it hadn't reflected all the way down. So I think it reflects. If it's a soft line, like Neptune is 246, it'll reflect from there to the heart to the astral, probably. And if it's a hard line energy, it'll
also reflect, and maybe it'll go from a different aspect in the head to the throat to probably the maybe the base of the spine center. So I think these things just naturally resonate at different centers. You know, and as you were speaking about astrology, I started to think, I was relieved to hear that you don't work so much with aspects, because I find, you know, I've been studying astrology for years and years and years, and I feel like it's still so dense for me to break through. But when I look at the symbols, to me these are energetic constructs. These are energetic doorways. So a symbol of Venus or a symbol of Neptune or whatever it is, if I meditate on it, I know that this is a doorway into another reality. And if I stay with it long enough, I'm there. I'm in that energetic space. So I started to also think about, so when you said you don't work so much with aspects, I'm always envious of people like yourself who do know aspects so well. And I know I have a long way to go, and I know I still need to master some of that. At the same time, I'm so relieved to know that you work with like major themes like moon and you were talking about Mercury and Mars.
In esoteric astrology, he doesn't talk about aspects.
See, that's it. And so when Nicholas yesterday was talking about the crosses and how disciples work with crosses, you know, like the fixed cross, would be so enjoyable as an exercise to look at our charts. How can we look at our charts with, you know, superimposing a fixed cross, for example, onto it, and how do we work with that?
Yeah, I did some work with that in my book, and I've got Buddha's chart and Jesus' chart on the crosses, and because obviously they're both on the cardinal cross because they're avatars, but Buddha came in to teach discipleship, so I set up the fixed cross and I put 0 degrees Taurus on the ascendant. And I just dropped up off the, in solar fire you can do it, you can model the wheels. And then I just set it up with equal house and put 0 Taurus on the ascendant, and all the planets dropped in. And there are no houses, I took out all the house numbers, so all you have is the cross with the planets in there where they fall. The other spokes are there as well, they're 12, but on the angles I put the cross. And just read that intuitively, and that's how I've started to work with it. I did that for simplicity's sake, because the book is primarily for those who perhaps are at the beginning of the journey of astrology as well. But it's a simple way to start working with it, and I would say perhaps you might want to look at yours. I'm not sure, I could set that cross, I'm not sure I bought the wheel here, but if you've got solar fire, you can just play with it and you can click out certain things and get that cross. But that's how I started working with it. In Jesus' chart, I put him on the cardinal cross because he came to teach initiation. And I thought, and take the students from discipleship through initiation. So I put him on the cardinal cross and put 0 degrees Aries there and dropped all the planets around it and just looked at that, and gave emphasis to the 4 arms and where the rulers were and what that meant. So,
doesn't the cardinal cross start with actually the 5th degree? Master, when you become a master, you step onto the cardinal cross.
I just put in place of each house, like an equal house, you have 30 degrees equally. I just put the cardinal cross on the angles with 0 degrees. It could be fine-tuned. That was the beginning.
I just wanted to say, whether you work with aspects or ignore the aspects, you'll still come up with pretty much the same story, because the themes are repeated in anyone's chart over and over and over again. The energies come through and express in different ways. So I use aspects, Leoni doesn't, but we come up with the same story.
No, I do.
You do?
I do use aspects when I'm doing a reading for people. And like, there's a square from Saturn. I was looking for some hard aspect to Eva's moon in that. But when I'm doing a natal chart reading, like the Tibetan based it all around sun, moon, and ascendant.
Right.
And all the readings that I do, that is my central thing, and everything has to fit in with that. And whether it's, if I see easy aspects to the moon and the pattern, and I know the pattern hasn't been purified because we're where we are, and especially if people are not really interested in this work, I know the pattern is operating, and if they have all easy aspects, I just treat it as a hard aspect and read it as a hard. I don't say you have a flowing energy. It's just the flowing energy, but what is it a flowing energy of? Of the moon pattern. So the moon pattern is, in my case, see, I'm a perfect example. I have the sextile to Mars and Jupiter in the 10th house in Leo, sextile my moon and Libra in the 12th house. That's my problem pattern. Mars and the moon are my problem patterns, like Scorpio rising. And so there is a perfect example of a sextile. It's not a hard aspect, but that's my problem. I'm still trying to break it and work with it.
I wanted to say also on these charts we're looking at, we also have the asteroids. So we have very busy charts. But the asteroids will just give us more information about the central themes, except that they may be differentiated in a slightly different way. So the story comes through with many variations.
Yes, I don't work with asteroids myself, but the Tibetan mentioned them, and he said that they would increase in importance.
So Pluto has been deplanetized in astrology. So what do you look at? How do you consider that? What DK says, when a new planet is found, we have 117 planets something out in the solar system that have not yet. I mean, some of which only have been found. So a new planet has been found, right? Or is it a new constellation recently? And then Pluto itself has been taken off the chart of being a planet. So what is that indicating to us as a psyche of humanity, that Pluto has been relegated to something else, and that also a new planet has been, it's a planet or a constellation, a new constellation is recently. Planetoid?
Was that Sedna?
Cygna? Does anybody know?
Yeah. It's larger, I think it's larger than Pluto, isn't it? Yeah.
What is it?
I think it's called a planetoid or something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I still treat Pluto as we've always treated Pluto, as the planet of, first-rate planet of destruction, if need be. This is where if you think that the Tibetan would not have recognized all the other planets, it's mind-boggling. Of course he would have. And yet he gave us Pluto as one of the planets for us to work with. So I still stick to that.
Sure. But what does this mean in terms of humanity? The fact that when humanity discovers a planet, it has a mark within the psyche of humanity. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I think both Eva and I could attest to the influences of Pluto, because knowing our charts, we've had transit the majority of our chart, and life was impacted at those moments for certain in depth. But it's science who has, at least for the moment, crossed it off the list. Not the Tibetan, not anybody else. It's just at this moment it doesn't fit their criteria. Who's to say that it doesn't go back on the list? But I don't pay any attention to that. I find Pluto is extremely effectual when it comes to visit you. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay.
One more thing. We know that Pluto was discovered around the time when humanity was able to deal with annihilation, with the atom bomb. So it has a tremendous significance in our psyche that way. Whether Sedna has any kind of significance psychologically, I don't know, and I'm not sure any of us at this point know. We don't know very much about it. No.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. It was Ernest Rutherford who split the atom, and who was it? Lawson was talking about him around that time, and so that was when Pluto was discovered. So yes, rightly so, it represents that volcanic eruption and everything that we know about the first ray. So I've been thinking about this and letting it percolate. If I couldn't come up with a clear answer at the beginning, but it's been percolating. And what I think is that esoteric astrologers, because we have such great respect for the Tibetan, we will work with it. We will work quite a while. But in the minds and the astrologers who have been working with it in the exoteric field, they will continue, I think, to consider it as they always have. But as new generations come along, that it will start to disappear, I think, disappear from the psyche of the consciousness of astrologers, and they will stop working with it. And I would hope that what that would symbolize in the psyche of humanity is that that first-ray destructiveness will start to recede. And of course by then we will have the third outpouring of the Tibetan's word coming through, and there will probably be new interpretations of it, you see. And so gradually we will all be gone in a while, and perhaps we could say in 50 years that Pluto might be considered just an asteroid, and what a joy that would be. Okay. Oh, any other questions? Do we have more time? Oh, okay. Who would like to, their chart discussed further? Does anyone have a question about their chart? Oh. Okay. So this is a group sharing, and what was it? Well, yes, Mercury is called both the star of the intuition and star of conflict. It's so interesting. I've really studied Mercury, and I believe that the Tibetan only gives us information about going up even beyond Buddhi, like that. Wherever there is communication like that, whether it's horizontally, but I'm talking vertically, Mercury is there, and I think it is what they call in the East chitta. It is the mind stuff. It is the mind of God. I think that Mercury ultimately represents the universal mind, and that we work with it on our levels, like in the way that we do. But there is something very profound. The Tibetan actually said something about it, that Mercury was an older brother of Saturn's, something like that. And it was an odd thing to say because Saturn is a synthesizing planet, and usually we relegate Mercury to being, one of the personal planets or something. But when I started studying it, really studying it for my book, what I was trying to do was differentiate mind. I was working with mind and the difference with Venus and Mercury as symbols of the mind. And I really started to see it as chitta, and I kept hearing that word, and I realized it was just that communication, and it doesn't matter how high it goes, like in the chart of the planetary logos, Sanat Kumara, he will have a high equivalent of Mercury operating like that, which is just the vertical communication as well as horizontal. So I just really love it, and of course the plane that we are aspiring to be consciously aware of, the Buddhic plane, it rules it, of course. And so in exoteric astrology, Mercury is just logical mind. Venus doesn't even figure. Venus is love and sexuality. But Mercury is just mind, but it is so much more than that. And Venus, of course, is the man's thinking mind and growing intelligent, but unfolded with Mercury. Mercury unfolds Venus, that they work together as a team. And as we know, at that level, when the two have merged and we have androgyny, that is represented, I think, by Mercury and Venus. I think them both, or Venus at least. But so we come here now, and we're going to be looking at Mercury in Gemini. Mercury in Gemini in the 8th house. We'll just interpret that. Just coldly, we'll just go into that as a symbol for potential conflict. It's in the house of transformation, so we can credibly interpret it as being a major source of conflict in her life. Who would like to comment about Mercury in Gemini in the 8th house? First, how well does Mercury operate in Gemini? Yeah, it's the exoteric ruler. And so on the exoteric level, it's strong in the personality, isn't it? So we have people that like to talk. Often Mercury or Moon or Sun people like to talk. They're always talking. My husband is Moon and, no, it's Moon and Virgo. He can talk. Moon and Gemini. Sorry, Moon and Gemini. He's always talking. He says to me, I wish you talked more. I say to him, I must be the only wife in the world that husband says that to, but I've got Mercury conjunct Saturn in the 8th house, and so I'm being trained to keep my mouth shut, and I'm really reticent, and I don't really like speaking, unless I'm in a group like this, and I just love it. But my husband is in car things. He's in car things, and I go along because, I love him, but I don't speak much. I've got Mercury in the 8th house as well. I like that. So who'd like to add to that? Mercury in Gemini and in the 8th house.
To me, with it being in the 8th house, would mean that that particular mind is good at doing research. Would like to delve deep into whatever subject, whatever work that they're doing, and not afraid to do their research.
Yeah. And she here's the conjunct Uranus in the 8th house.
That's even more, and that will bring light to whatever, you'll find something and you'll go, aha, I get it, I see it. Because with that Uranus there, they say is the higher octave of Mercury. So first of all, it's a very occult combination. You can understand the occult stuff quite well, and you might be very interested in doing all the occult research necessary in order to learn this stuff. You probably have no trouble learning occultism.
Yes, I was off on another tangent. I'm just thinking that is a very great gift. We were discussing yesterday the hard stuff. That is a real blessing in your life. The 8th house does represent, though, needing to do work. It's the Capricorn house, really. The Scorpio house, really. And so there is some transformation that needs to take place to maximize the potential brilliance. That aspect in exoteric astrology is they would say that's a brilliant mind, potentially a brilliant mind. So you were very articulate yesterday. Have you embraced the thought that perhaps, do you know that that is a potential within you? Perhaps you've realized it.
I get stuck on the Mercury and the communication piece. I relate more to what she said at the beginning. I'm not a talker. I've never been a talker. I've realized, I've worked through a lot of the shadow pieces that, around that and where, this lifetime, where some of those blockages have come from. But it kind of feeds back into the Capricorn piece too in some regards, maybe it is just the expectation. Maybe it is, and as I'm thinking of what you said, between love and insufficiency, I'm leaning more towards insufficiency, and maybe that's where all of that's kind of related.
We've got a lot of food for thought there. It definitely says in the 8th house to realize this potential, there is work to be done. Really important work to be done. But when you get clear about what you need to do, you should be able to make the moves very quickly in any area of your transformational work because Uranus is there with your mind. So once you it's really important you get really clear in your mind about what the problem is and what you need to do to shift it in an esoteric way as well as in a practical way. And then I would think that if you apply yourself in that, you should be able to really make that transition. It's a wonderful, wonderful aspect. It would be nice to have time to relate it into the rest of the chart, and perhaps at some other time we might be able to do that. Any other thoughts?
Just building on what you're saying, there is the impression that I'm getting with Mercury and Gemini is the reconciliation of the opposites. So Gemini, the opposites. So finding all those dualities, and with that keen mind of Mercury there, you can delve really deep and just bring to surface all those opposites that are kind of warring within the self until they just get lighter and lighter and lighter, and through the transformational power of Uranus, you can transform all those opposites that you have to use Uranus to transform them into their higher potential. I go, wow, I think that's a great aspect.
That triggered something in me. I mean, we're supposed to be thinking about how to bring in the new archetypes for the Aquarian age, and Uranus in that position with Mercury will give you insights and the ability to express those archetypes verbally, so that because of the mind you can express. We're all ears.
And there's another really important thing you could say about that, is Mercury is always the messenger. And Uranus represents the hierophant of the mysteries and the path of the mysteries. Potentially you are great in what you can say. You have the ability to heal people of their patterns. Once you do your work, you can do 8th house Scorpio type work, is help people heal their patterns. You have that power. You know how to do it. Yeah. Well, you've done it in past lives, I suspect. And are you doing that already? I would actually try and cultivate that and work more, because it's to me it seems if you do that sort of work, it will help remove any feelings of insecurity or I'm trying to get the negative core belief for you, but I'm not good enough or something along that line. If you can remove that, you'll fly with it. Uranus helps us fly. So I think that's beautiful. Really lovely. Any other thoughts about that? All right, well, we've got just a few more minutes, and so perhaps we might just have a recap. In the last few minutes, we'll go around each person, and I'll just ask you perhaps to share with the group and with our group sitting out there about what you've learned from the work we did today and the work you've done before. Anything that has come up and you think, oh yes, this is important, or I really like this or that, and perhaps more than just a couple of sentences, just to share and to use up this time.
Well, what I actually came away with is your take on the way you approach conflict. I thought that was actually a new piece for me. It's something I hadn't thought about, to look at the moon, the patterns of the moon, to look at Mercury, and to look at Mars. Because as you were saying that and other people were speaking, I was looking at my own chart and I went, she's absolutely right. I can see how each one of those has created certain patterns that are difficult for me in my life. So that's an important piece that I'll use.
I'm glad. And just adding on to that, when you're teaching new astrologers, if you can wipe out, because in now the psychology course I've written for Moira Federation, I've only got a short time to do it. And I decided to drop aspects, any mention of aspects at all together, and concentrate on the sun, moon and ascendant only. And I thought, you don't need any more than that. I think really, I mean, obviously when we're doing interpretation like we're doing, I'm looking for square patterns and conflict patterns. So I do use them, but for a natal interpretation of the chart, esoteric interpretation, I primarily work with those. And when I'm working with conflict, that's where I go. Yeah.
But you're right, I do the same thing. I work with those three luminaries, yes, and really flush them out.
Yes.
But I hadn't considered the conflict part.
Well, I think this session has just...
are they? I'm so sorry. We can keep sharing after. Thank you for joining us if you're still there, and thank you everyone. I really enjoyed this. And thanks for